Good evening, yogis. Monks for the evening. Those who have gone forth, at least for an hour and a half, into a life of simplicity and presence. Those who have gone forth willing to leave behind the past. It's gone anyway. And even leave behind the future. It's just a dream. Gone forth to inhabit your life, right where it touches you. So in about 30 seconds, I'll start a little instruction. As always, we begin with the simple fact that you are aware. So I invite you all to be aware of that fact. Beauty of awareness is that it's self-knowing. It knows itself. So just be aware. And be aware is made possible because of this physical body, this unique expression of life, this incarnation. So be aware of being embodied. And what that requires is that you let go of the idea of the body and you experience it as sensation, as aliveness, as vibration, whatever is the experience of being embodied. So intimately, so subtly that the idea of the body melts away. And there's just that experience. The idea of hands melts away. And there's just those sensations of contact. The idea of the lips melts away. There's just that moisture, softness, pressure. The eyelids touching, this idea melts away into the experience of a gentle touch sensation. Once again, expanding to feel the whole field of sensations that we call body. Without the word. Noticing by having attention, inhabiting this experience. There is a stilling, there's a harmonizing, there's a relinquishing of ideas, a gathering into a calm abiding. And within this gentle stillness, what supports the calming and the ease, the steadiness, is a connection to and an enjoyment of the feeling of the body when it breathes. Feeling the waves of sensation that arise with your body's breath. Each breath noticed and enjoyed. It supports the settling, the easing of our fixations, preoccupations, and just letting go into the openness of our aware presence, that combination of awareness and embodiment. Just this moment, just this sitting body, just this breath. Gathering here, sustaining that connection to this felt experience without any strain or tension. Just sticking to the feeling of the sitting body, the breathing body. Just receiving the sensations. Short waves of the breath, long waves of breath, rough breaths, smooth breaths. However the body's breathing, it's felt. Settling our attention to the body makes available all the other sense experiences. Sounds become more available and clear when they become predominant. Other physical sensations light up in our awareness, aching, burning, stabbing, itching. We welcome them all when they move to the foreground of our awareness. We let them come, we let them grow, we let them go. The same with moods and emotions that roll through our system like internal weather. Thoughts and images that come unbidden and float through our mind like clouds. Only engaged in the ever-changing process, not carried away by the content of our thoughts, just the thinking mind thinking, hearing, smelling, tasting, sensations. Everything is changing. All welcomed with this steady, relaxed, interested attention. Attention supported by the anchor of the body and breath. Not letting our mind leave our body. Staying here, staying aware, staying embodied. Just this moment. Just remembering that being aware is the goal. This is natural. There's no salvation in time. This being aware, being mindful is not a means to awakening, it's awakening itself. Just be aware. Connect with this unconditional mindfulness. Just this moment. When you realize you've been lost in thought, celebrate. You're now aware. No need to look back, no need to judge. This is the condition of the mind. Sometimes there's mindfulness. Sometimes it becomes obscured by a thought pattern. But eventually we wake up. So when you wake up to where you are, relax. Sense what it's like to have a mind free of preoccupations, and in support of remaining anchored to this living present, strengthening quality of awareness. We connect our attention again with the body, sensation, and the gentle movements that our body makes when it breathes, without any effort to breathe, letting the breath breathe itself. It's a selfless process. It's egoless. It does itself. Knowing this, we realize the Dharma. Just this moment. If dullness and dreaminess is your predominant state of mind, notice this. Notice this is what dullness and dreaminess is like. Be aware of this state. And same with restlessness and agitation. No, this is what restlessness and agitation is like. Mingle your mind with this experience. And feel free, though, to refresh yourself. Release all strain and tension, struggle, and just begin again. Every moment in our practice is a new beginning. It's free, it's open, outside of time. You can always begin again. Awareness, embodiment, breath, and all the other sense experience. Just this moment. When the sound of the gong arises, just be aware of hearing. And as the sound arises and fades, there arises the impulse to open the eyes. Be aware of that. Be aware of the opening of the eyes. Be aware of the arising of outer sight, of seeing. Be aware of the impulse and then any other movements that you make. So practice or awareness continues. Formally, informally. Wherever you go, whatever you do, there's awareness available. As always, a pleasure to sit with you. Noticing tonight we are small but mighty. Still, hopefully you're feeling the support of practicing together. And just to add to that feeling of practicing together, I'd love to invite everyone to have their camera on and say good evening to each other. And just if you're interested or willing to write in the chat where you're calling in from, but first and most important is just to say hello and feel free to unmute. Just
Hello,
take in.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi, everyone.
Everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
There are humans here, not just pictures, not just iPhotos or whatever it's called. Each person with a life, a story, a past. All of us with an unknown future, shared humanity, and there's something really special about practicing together. So the inspiration to do this came from our fearless leader, Mary, the president of the board of Mission Dharma. So we have Regina, Saskatchewan, Victoria, Whidbey Island, Washington. We've got Oakland, San Francisco, the Mission. So we have our Canadian and US contingent tonight. Thought we'd spend a few minutes, if you're open to it, just discussing your practice. If anyone has any questions about what you experienced tonight or about the instructions, anything you noticed, or anything about the teachings, please feel free to use the raised hand function. I think you'll find it under the reactions and most everyone's Zoom program. And a reminder that your questions, your comments, or your descriptions about your practice will be of some use to someone else. So it's part of the generosity of us being together. It's part of our dana to feel free to confess our delusions, ask any question if you have it. Hopefully not too theoretical. Just pause, and in the meantime, if nothing comes, just enjoy the nature of being aware. Enjoy the effect that the practice has had on your nervous system, on your body. But feel free to raise any question if you like. Okay, Mission Dharma. Catherine, please feel free.
I wanted to just share that as I was sitting, one thing that came up for me was just this overwhelming concern for the planet. Thinking of my friends in Eugene, Oregon, who are experiencing an unprecedented heat wave. It's where I grew up, and it was never over like 82 in the summer, and it was 108 and sustained. So I guess I was really thinking about it in the context of this practice and feeling a lot of gratitude for everyone who's practicing, everyone who's trying to, come together in sort of a shared concern for the world, and just this sincere wish that we can all do something about climate change and try to save life on this planet. It was sort of a feeling of just kind of a heart. It was like a heart stab. It's like really deep.
Mm.
And so I don't know if I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of fear in there, but there was also just this anguish and hope that through our practice and developing wisdom, we will be able to come together and do something positive.
May it be so, and may more of us feel that caring, which only comes, I think, when our hearts are available, when we're open, when we let in the reality of what's going on. Our hearts are meant to break. We're meant to feel anguish, and ideally, it can turn into action, and hopefully, we're available and we respond in our individual ways and big collective ways. But it's also one of the other values of practice is that we may not be able to affect the climate in a way that allows us to thrive. And that's why it's necessary to have the stability, all the caring, but the stability and equanimity to be able to feel that anguish and not lose our sense of well-being and joy. So it's both. But I'm so happy that you named that. It was actually in my notes tonight to speak about it, but I don't need to say any more. But I was also including the unbearable pain of the people in Florida and that condominium project. This is what, if we're human, this is what we have to open to, either very close and personal or just part of our human family or all family of beings, because our heart can break for the way animals are treated, the way we treat animals.
Yeah, I think I realized when you said that about the condominium project, I realized it started with just a feeling, like really feeling the gut punch of a friend of mine lost his daughter recently, and in an accident, and I think that somehow expanded to be a concern for the planet.
Yeah.
I think that's where it started, though.
Yeah. The sad part is that, there's so many sad elements, but our practice doesn't inoculate us from feeling that heartbreak. But hopefully we turn it into equanimity, we turn it into love, compassion, and wish for the best. So anyone else, please? Thanks, Catherine. So if no one feels to speak, I think I'll just carry on a little bit. And I'm not sure how long I'll speak because something popped up to talk about during the sitting. I had something I was thinking about all day, but then what popped up during the sitting, and it was apropos of grief and sorrow and how we navigate that. A confluence of different events in my life and memories came together to encourage me to talk about something that happened maybe it's a little over 40 years ago. I attended many different 3-month meditation practice periods in my 20s and continued into my 30s a little bit, as much as I was able to, and still navigate the world of livelihood. But just by an odd chance, I ended up at the Insight Meditation Society in Barre, Massachusetts. 2 of the 3-month practice periods that I was able to do. This is 3 months where you enter into silence and you essentially sit like we did tonight, and you walk, and you alternate periods of sitting and walking. And every few days you have a meeting with a teacher to describe for 10 minutes or so what's happening in your practice. And in the evening, there's usually a talk that's about almost an hour long. And otherwise, it's just entirely a deconstruction project of reality, just paying attention until the attention becomes so continuous and microscopic that the whole world that we usually experience, the more gross perception of the world, breaks down, and we start to see the nature of reality a little bit more. And part of that process is you see that how there is nothing in the world of changing conditions that you can cling to. And whoever I imagine myself to be, even that sense of identity was nothing that could be clung to. And I remember coming to a place in this, again, 40 something years ago, coming to a place where I was terrified to sit on my cushion. And I didn't know at the time that I was entering into what's considered a classical stage in the development of practice when you do it in this way. And it's loosely called the rolling up the mat stage, where you want to roll up your mat and go home because it feels too painful, too hard. This is what was unfolding in the practice, but I happened to be on the second of these 2 3-month retreats. Both of them, one of the teachers in residence was a very famous Indian meditation teacher by the name of Dipa Ma. And maybe many of you have read a book about the life of Dipa Ma. Many people have been touched by reading about her teachings, but just by complete chance, I was able to meet her, and I was able to have her as my interview teacher on especially the second 3-month retreat. And the reason it dovetails with the talk about loss and grief and the climate catastrophe is Deepa Ma, what really marked her life was just unspeakable loss. I think she lost her child, her husband, and several people in her family in a very short period of time, to the point where she was inconsolable. And something led her to literally crawl to the entrance to this monastery in Calcutta, I think it was Calcutta, where she met a teacher named Munindra. Now, Munindra, for those of you, you may not be interested in all this history, but Munindra was the root main teacher for Joseph Goldstein, who I think I mentioned recently. I hosted a woman named Gail Anderson who co-wrote a book with Joseph recently on integrity. But Joseph, I've always considered my root teacher, and to me, the preeminent Western Dharma teacher. His teacher was a fellow named Munindra. But Munindra met Deepa Ma and introduced her to the meditation practice, essentially the same practice that we're doing. But she was in so much pain, but so determined to deal with her sorrow, and so inspired by the support of Munindra, that she practiced relentlessly. And even with all of this loss, she came to this profound awakening by not just following her thoughts, not just getting lost, choosing moment by moment by moment by moment, formally and informally, choosing love and attention. And in fact, she was asked in her later years, what's in your mind? You know, it's always curious, the mind of somebody who's awake. And she basically said 3 things: peace, mindfulness, and love. That was it. A mind free of our ordinary preoccupations. Why? Not because she had some kind of special power, but because she devoted herself to that quality of aware presence. And not only did it wasn't like she had her awakening and then was done. When I first saw her, the first time I experienced her at the 3-month retreat in 1980, and in both cases, she stayed in a little home across the street from Insight Meditation Society. And in front of the house, it was called Hats, House Across the Street. In front of Hats was a clothesline where she would humble, not imperious at all, not this highfalutin guru, but completely humble. I actually visited her in Calcutta, and in this noisy, intense, small little apartment where she lived with her daughter and her daughter's son, and just people all around, but her mind was silent. But getting back to Hats, the house across the street, and the clothesline, virtually every time I looked across the street during the day, because I would go outside to do my walking practice, alternating sitting and walking, I'd look across the street, and there she was doing walking meditation continuously, walking to and fro, step by step, just giving off and I don't want to romanticize this, just giving off the fragrance of simplicity and peace. The effect of giving one's attention to the simple knowing what you're doing when you're doing it. And in this case, the formal, she loved I'm sure she just loved it was like a celebration for her to just know she was walking. And you may think, well, how is that going to solve the climate crisis? How's that going to how is that going to help me deal with my life and all my decisions? That simple act of continuous mindfulness gave off such a fragrance that she literally, not through doing something special, but through the quality of her mind, silence, her peace, awareness, love. Countless people were drawn to that ever-present wakefulness and clarity, which we are. And it's really a function of a matter of whether we nurture it. It's not something that we create, this being aware. It's something that we nurture, supported by each thing that we're aware of. But the common thread running through everything that we notice is awareness. And you can see the effect on someone who has given their life to the cultivation of mindfulness and love. Now, the love part impacted me individually, and the power of her mind, the power of mind that comes through continuous attention. During the second 3-month retreat, when I hit this place in my practice where I just could feel that the whole world that I imagined, the world of concepts and solidity, was breaking up. And I saw that there is literally nothing in this world that has any substance to it. And everything began to dissolve very quickly. And I just didn't want to sit. And yet the practice was really opening up. But my mind started rationalizing, saying, okay, I've seen enough already. I've been here long enough. And it was a kind of arrogance that I felt. You know, I had some experience already, and I just finished graduate school. And my mind just kind of made up a story that I was done. But I kept going, and things started to really open up. But I was still terrified and just wanted to stop. And it was time for my meeting with her. So I walked to Hats, to the house across the street. Walked in, did my pranaming, you know, just did whatever the appropriate form of greeting. She invited me in, and she was using a translator at the time. And she looked at me, and I said that I described what was happening in my practice. And she reached out with her hand, and she began to caress the top of my hand. And she looked at me very intently. And she said, if you stay with this, you will earn great merit. And those words don't sound so compelling when you hear me say them. But when she said them, they carried a power and a confidence that literally felt like I was infused with love and confidence. And I literally went back to my cushion and the whole thing just took off. It was like I was jet propelled, and the whole practice opened up at that time, so much so that I started to have these kind of classical experiences. And it was bad timing in a way, because it was reaching the end of this 3-month practice period. And at the end of the practice period, most everyone is excited to come out, and many people you've gotten to know very intimately, not talking to them, but very intimately. So I had been part of an integration period before, but that some people also call the disintegration period. But I'd been part of that period before, and it included taking walks with people and going into town, having some pizza, and a little theater program at night called Dharma Follies. And I'm reaching the end of the retreat, and she says, "Hey, you've just had this kind of opening. You need to keep going. I don't want you to go through the integration week. You have to just stay in your room and keep practicing." And clearly there was something happening in the practice that was somewhat interesting, but it was really the force of her encouragement and power that allowed me to actually sit through the integration week when I'm hearing people laughing and partying in the background. It was very challenging, and I made it at least till the Thursday of the next week, and then I finally, my practice started to devolve. But it was really the power of her love and her presence that helped me stay with something that felt almost unbearable. It may seem like, oh, just privilege of sitting for 3 months, but when your mind starts to deconstruct the world, it's scary. It can be scary, but it's a natural part of the process, and it's very user friendly. So I hope what I'm telling you doesn't discourage you from doing long practice periods. But I think I just wanted to talk about that partly for 2 reasons. One, because Deepa Ma was someone who experienced enormous loss and was still able to find the joy, the peace, the love, and turn it into the manure of awakening. The other reason that it popped up is I've just been called to be interviewed for a documentary that's being done about Deepa Ma. And so a lot of the memories from that retreat, and I'm sure that I'm rewriting history in some of 40 years is a long time, but I just thought I would try it out on you as well and see if it had any meaning. Just a sense of continuity of practice, finding that place of balance, even in a time, in a world of so much sorrow. That in the midst of, I think of that Camus line, in the midst of winter, I realized that there was within me an invincible summer. But my model for that invincible summer was this tiny Bengali woman, Deepa Ma. Tiny, but a lion of a heart and a nature of mind. And I don't think that she has anything on any person here, except for what she did with her attention. So makes me want to really make something of my life, really keep that process of training the heart to stay here and to appreciate the nature of the mind that you have been, each of us has been given, and then nurture it so that all the qualities that flow from that can express themselves. I just happened to look down and saw a quote from Tara Brach, who said, "Perhaps the biggest tragedy in our lives is that freedom is possible Yet we can pass our years trapped in the same old patterns. We may want to love other people without holding back, feel authentic, to breathe in the beauty around us, dance and sing. Yet each day we listen to inner voices that keep our life small. Just notice, even in a moment of just being aware, your life in that moment of awareness has no limit. It's not small. It's beyond, it can't be contained in a little thought. It's open. And I don't mean the idea of your life, I mean the direct experience of it. The next time you just look at a vista or at the water or in the garden, just notice your mind. The joy and an ease and a tension is so natural. It's nearer than your breath. From Zen master Hakuin, just a little punctuation. All beings by nature are Buddha. That means awake. As ice by nature is water. Apart from water, there's no ice. Apart from beings, no Buddha. How sad that people ignore the near and search for truth afar. Like someone in the midst of water, crying out in thirst, or a child of a wealthy home, wandering among the poor. Lost on paths of ignorance, we wander through difficult path to difficult path. When shall we be freed from this cycle of birth and death and suffering? Oh, meditation. To this, the highest praise, devotion, training, the many perfections, all have their source in meditation. Those who meditate even once wipe away beginningless crimes. Where are all the dark paths then? The pure land itself is near. Those who hear this truth even once and listen with a grateful heart, treasuring it, revering it, gain blessings without end. Much more, those who turn about and bear witness to self-nature that is no nature, go far beyond mere doctrine. How boundless and free is the sky of awareness. How bright the full moon of wisdom. Truly, is anything missing now? Nirvana is right here, before our eyes. This very place is the lotus land. This very body, the Buddha. So any doubts that you might have of this, just notice them as doubts. They're empty little bubbles in this vast openness. Just be aware. Rest your weary mind in this natural peace. End with a quote from Ajahn Chah. It's been one of the favorites through COVID, since we've all been challenged by our minds, tormented by our minds, worries about what's next, concerns. He says about this mind, the truth is, there's nothing wrong with it. It's intrinsically pure. Within itself, it's already peaceful. That the mind is not peaceful these days is because it follows moods. Real mind doesn't have anything to it. simply an aspect of nature. Becomes peaceful or agitated because moods deceive it. But really, this mind of ours is already unmoving, free, open, peaceful. Just like a leaf which is still as long as no wind blows. Our practice is to see this original mind. So we must train the mind to know the different sense impressions, to know the thoughts, to know the feelings, to know the sensation, and not get lost in them, to make it peaceful. Just this is the aim of all this difficult practice we put ourselves through. So may we all realize natural freedom. May we all train our minds to not be pulled by the winds of changing conditions. May we all be liberated, and may that liberated heart be used for the benefit of this planet, for being a stable refuge for people in sorrow and need, including ourselves. Dedicate our lives, our practice to the welfare and benefit of all every day. May all beings be liberated.